Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and for those of you who have been really wanting these particular videos, we're talking about the Lost Mine of Phandelver. This is a Dungeon Master's guide. It's not a player's guide, so if you are a player and you're playing the game, this is going to be full of spoilers, and I suggest that this is a good time for you to leave. Now, I'm not saying that you aren't welcome, but you're probably going to come across a fair amount of information that I will reveal, or somebody will ask a question about, and you will find out stuff you don't need to know. And I know your Dungeon Master wouldn't want that, and I'm sure you wouldn't want that either. So we will see you in the next live stream if you are a player. Otherwise, if you're a Dungeon Master, stick around, and we're going to talk about Stonehill Inn. Now, I have done videos on this particular topic, sort of scattered around, but I'm putting everything more focused this time into one sort of presentation. So if you turn to page 15 and 16 of the Lost Mine of Phandelver, you will find some information or details around Stonehill Inn. And I want to read out the passage to you before I go into the rest of this, the information that I have. In the centre of town stands a large, newly built roadhouse of old field stones and rough-hewn timbers. The common room is filled with locals nursing mugs of ale or cider, all of them eyeing you with curiosity. So this is your opening scene that is provided in the adventure, and I suggest you use it. You can change it if you like. You might have noticed that I had changed the wording from field stones to old field stones, because there is the belief that Stonehill Inn has been constructed by stones that were used to originally build Phandalin. And so a lot of the older stones have been repurposed to build this inn. Now, whether you believe that is how it should be is up to you. I don't think it's really an issue. But if you feel that's going to help in terms of building out your world, then use that information as much as you like. This is essentially the only inn situated near Phandalin, and certainly the only inn in Phandalin. So it's got a monopoly, like many shops and stores in this location. The owner or proprietor is Phandalin Stonehill. Now, Phandalin Stonehill and his family, they help run. His family help run the roadhouse itself. I've already done or made a video discussing Phandalin Stonehill and his family. So if you really want to go and check out that information, you can. It shouldn't be hard to find. Just type in his name and I'm sure you will find it. So what do we know about Stonehill Inn? Well, we know that Stonehill Inn is a modest location. It has 6 rooms to rent, and that is going to cost you about 5 silver pieces per night per person. Now, if you decide that double occupancy of a room should be charged at a higher rate, then as a Dungeon Master, you're welcome to do that. I didn't really sort of worry about that sort of stuff, but yes, the modest rate is supposed to be 5 silver pieces per night. The Stonehill Inn charges standard rates for food and drink and lodging, and all of their rates are at a modest level, and you can find out that information by looking in the Player's Handbook on page 158. I've already discussed this a little bit in the Phandalin Stonehill video. Now, the inn is the hub for everything. Essentially, this is the one location. Now, Stonehill Inn is located in the centre of Phandalin, pretty much right near the centre. It's just above where the Town Master's Hall is, and beside the Shrine of Luck. Now, the inn is the hub for pretty much every adventure hook, rumour, and all the information that you might sort of, or at least the kernels of information that you might want to reveal to your players and their characters. Don't present all of the rumours at one time. Please don't do that. It's too much information for you. It's too much information for your players. So keep it to like 1 to 3 tips or tidbits as you go. And honestly, it is possible to drop one of those tidbits and it still give you the kernels for 3 different adventure hooks if you really want. And I will explain as I go. characters can spend a little time in the common room chatting up the townspeople, and they can really provide some very useful information. And although it seems like very small chunks of information, they're still interesting and useful enough that you'll find that your players will have enough to go with when they're starting off. So what are some of the rumours? Now, the rumours that your non-player characters, your NPCs, can present in the inn come from a number of different locations. And I want to go through each one individually and sort of flesh them out as best I can, so you can sort of make them your own. I don't want to give you stuff because there isn't a lot in here on these characters. So rather than me presenting what I would do, I'm going to present you with a kernel of an idea, and I want you to take it with a grain of salt. You do not need to use it this way. Make it your own. There's plenty of room for movement. Let's start off with the first one. Nath, the old farmer. Now, I have presented you with an image of, I view him as being sort of big, heavy beard, quite dark, dirt underneath his fingernails, wearing sort of clothing that's either dirty or dark in colour, and I'd given him a hat. I decided that a hat that would sort of shield him from the sun, back and front, would be the kind of hat that he would wear. It's been around a while, and of course it's done its job. His features would obviously be a little bit worn and so forth because of exposure to the sun, things like that. And he's got that eye about him, that sort of no-nonsense eye, where he's a very practical individual. Farmers are usually quite practical in their application and don't really have a lot of time to waste because they work such long hours. And Nath is that kind of person. Now, what can Nath tell you? Sister Gali, who oversees the Shrine of Luck, recently left town for a few days and then returned wounded and exhausted. Now, this is supposed to lead you from Nath, this little bit of information is supposed to lead you to the Shrine of Luck, where the sister will then proceed to give them the next quest, which is the Banshee's Bargain. This is Agatha of Coneberry. I've already done a video on Agatha, and you're welcome to go and check that one out. So why is Nath dropping this little chunk of information? Is it only because we need to get players to the Shrine of Luck to follow that particular adventure hook? Or is it because Nath actually respects the sister? Now, it's hard to say exactly anything about the sister because Galia has those kind of those features that sort of suggest that she's maybe human, elf, or half-elf. And I am not going to go into a lot of detail, but I would say that it's probably a sign of respect from Nath with regard to the sister. So let's talk about the next character, and that is Elsa. Elsa's a fun character. Elsa is a gossiping barmaid. She's young, she's pretty, she's got quite a revealing sort of outfit, all the sorts of things you would expect from a barmaid. She's always got a happy smile on her face. She's a bit flirty, but she's not available. And I picked this image because this is the problem with barmaids, is your players will always have a character, somebody who's going to try and play a character who's going to get it down with the barmaid. So I made her seem available, but she is not available. I was taking the coyote approach to this, if you might say, for those of you who are aware of that particular movie. So she's available, or seems available, but she is not available. She's always happy. She's always got something interesting to say, and she is definitely going to give lots of information. This is not the only information she could relieve from people from and then pass on. So this is just a little bit of a snippet. Darren Edemath, the orchard keeper, is a former adventurer. Now, but this is a drop only essentially to sort of say, okay, look, if you tell me you're adventurers or you're looking for jobs and so forth, maybe he can help. Maybe he can lead you to the next job if you're not too sure what to do. Maybe he can help you answer some of the questions that I can't. Elsa can't really answer a lot of the questions that the player's characters would have with regard to things like where is Cragmore Castle, who is the Black Spider, all that sort of stuff. But she will pass them on to somebody who she feels might be able to get that information to them. So that is her motivation. She's just trying to be helpful. And the lead that she is providing is essentially to get to Edamath, the orchard, which then leads on to Old Owl Well, because Darren is going to talk about the fact that there are undead there, that there has been sort of signs of people being chased off, and there's a bit of unusual activity, and maybe that's a good place to start. It's not necessarily the hook and the information the players were looking for in terms of getting them to rescuing Gundren Rockseeker, but it's certainly, I would say, something you would drop from Elsa later on in your campaign when they've done a lot of the other bits and pieces in the story. So that is Elsa. And Elsa is well respected by Phandalin and the Stonehill family, which is why she's still doing the job and doing a great job as it happens. This is the next character I want to talk about, and actually probably the most important NPC in Stonehill in my view, and that is Lennar the miner. Lennar the miner is a pipe-smoking dwarf who's a bit rough around the edges. He's a miner, so he usually comes in with a few sort of injuries, and whether that be on his hands or on his face from just the mining process, usually quite dirty, doesn't really smells like so many different things, but certainly wet dog is often something that comes to mind, but of course charcoal, stone, rock, other things, and of course he doesn't necessarily clean himself very often, and this is often a case of what miners are sort of, they work hard, they work in a dirty environment, and people might view them as unclean, but the fact is that Lennar cleans himself quite often. The problem is he gets dirty all the time because he's constantly doing mining work. Now, why is he in this particular inn right now? It's quite unusual, because you would think he would be on his site mining and doing various things, but he's not right now. He's here. And here's the opening I'm going to give you. Orc raiders have been seen on the eastern end of Tribor Trail. The townsmaster is looking for someone to run them off. Now, why is he providing that information? Now, I would say that Lennar is doing this because he can't do his mining on his site without fear of being raided or captured or killed by orcs in the area, because no matter what you think, orcs are going to move around. Their war parties shift and change their locations. So he is at threat. Now, if he drops that little snippet, particularly if the player's characters are looking for another job, he will drop that. And now the great thing about this particular adventure hook is it will lead them to the Townmaster's Hall, and 3 different adventure hooks that you can then follow up from there, which is really, really cool. I will go into them in a second. So this is why Lennar is doing this. He's dropping it because if the player's characters get involved, deal with the orcs, he can go back to doing his mining, because right now, hanging out here in the inn, he's not staying there. He's not staying in the inn and having a room at the inn. He's gone to the inn because currently the tavern in Phandalin is absolutely, completely full of really rowdy red brands, and nobody likes going to the tap house. The Sleeping Giant tap house is full of red brands, and nobody really drinks there anymore. Everybody is actually drinking at Stonehill Inn, which is great for business in terms of Phandalin, but it's not great for business if you're the owner of the Sleeping Giant tap house. This is why Lennar is actually here. Now, if they go to the Townmaster's Hall, they'll find out from, I believe it's Harbin Wester, that he has a bounty on orcs in the area, and there's a bounty for actually bringing back the heads of orcs or disposing of orcs, and this is the adventure hook called Orc Trouble. He also will help lead the players into 2 other quests. Now, these are mostly around Sildar Hallwinter, which I've talked about before, because Sildar Hallwinter will be spending quite a lot of time in the Townmaster's Hall trying to deal with all the problems that Phandalin has. And that is, one, he's going to want the players to go and find Cragmore Castle, which they probably already want to do, so that they can rescue Gundren Rockseeker, unless, of course, they have already been to Cragmore Castle and already helped Gundren Rockseeker and brought him back alive, or at least brought back his body if he died. And the other one is to find out what happened to Ianu Albric. He's been trying to hunt down what happened to this particular individual. He was supposed to actually bring order to this location, and we haven't heard anything from them. So you actually pick up two really important adventure hooks. That is, find Cragmore Castle and find Ianu, each of which will lead to Gundren Rockseeker. And if you don't need to worry about those things, it will lead them into the Orcs. Now, the Orcs, I have to say, out of all the encounters I've ever run, has been probably the most traumatic for most groups. But you will find that out, and we'll talk about that in another video. So that is the Lennar's motivations behind dropping that particular adventure hook. Our next character is actually the wife of Tomlin Stonehill, and that is Trelina. That's the innkeeper's wife. She looks tired most of the time. She's very kind-hearted. She's a practical kind of person. She wears a green dress, which is a little bit revealing, but not quite as revealing as Elsa's dress. It's usually a little bit dirty because she's got like an apron to deal with all of it. She does the most of the work. She's the workhorse in this location, and she does everything pretty much in terms of cooking and cleaning. She's got a shawl draped over her, and she's got a bunch of keys hanging around her waist. She's got her hair tied up because every time she let it down, although it looks really pretty, and Tomlin likes her hair down, it actually is not very practical, which is why she's bundled it up, kept it out of the way so it doesn't get in the way, because she's doing so many different things. Whether that's looking after people who want drinks, or preparing food, or cleaning, she does a lot of work in this location. And she will drop a hint for the players' characters, and actually quite an interesting hint, but I would suggest to you to use that opportunity at the right time, because remember, this is going to lead into the Red Brands, and this is what she has to say. HowtoDandD, a local woodcarver, stood up to the Red Brands about 10 days ago when they came by his shop, and they were leering at his wife. The ruffians murdered him. Several townsfolk saw it happen. The Red Brands grabbed his body, and now his wife, daughter and son have gone missing too. It's terrible. Now, she may not actually directly say, we would really appreciate if you dispose of the Red Brands because they're causing trouble and they have already murdered somebody, and we think they're responsible for taking somebody captive and possibly murdering them as well. She's not necessarily going to allude to that. She doesn't actually know what happened to the missing members, but you will as the dungeon master, and of course the rest of the townsfolk don't actually know what happened to them as well. What the Red Brands have done is they have taken Thal's wife and children, and they are hiding them in their secret hideout, their little hideout or location, which is the Red Brand hideout. This is your lead-in. This is essentially where it's trying to take them. You are leading your players into a confrontation with the Red Brands. And if you drop this hint and they decide to follow it, I would lead through with the Red Brands ruffians encounter, where they encounter the Red Brands in town, and play it out as the Old West. Think about Wyatt Earp and the showdown at OK Corral. Play it out like that. That battle, it's a legendary battle. It's gone down. Everybody knows it. There's movies, there are stories about it. So I would play it out if the players' characters get involved with the Red Brands like that. That's my view. So don't bring that in unless they have dealt with things like Gundren Rockseeker. If they have lost the trail on where to find Cragmore Castle, then you can use this as a lead in if you wanted to. So they deal with the Red Brands, and hopefully they find out where Cragmore Castle is from the Red Brand ruffians, or from the hideout, or somebody within the hideout, and I'm sure that's possible. Okay, we're going to move on to the youngest member of Stonehill, and that is Pip. Pip is the Tomlin's young son. He's usually quite dirty. He's a curious individual. He's got the eye of being a little bit on the a smart aleck, but like most young children, that tends to be the case. Although he's dressed as if he's a pauper and a farmer, he's not. He does do chores and so forth around the place, but often a lot of the dirt and grime on him is a product of getting up to mischief and doing things unrelated to the chores that have been allocated to him from his father and his mother. His garb and the way he dresses, he knows that he's going to wind up tearing things up, so he usually wears something capable of dealing with that, and which is why Trelina has actually provided him with some gear, and there's repeated sewing stitch marks on his clothing as it's falling apart from all the activity that he gets up to. He is a good source of information, and probably the best source of information if you want your players to be able to get through the Red Brand hideout without too much fuss, because he can actually lead them to the back entranceway, the secret entranceway, rather than through the front door, if you might say. So I'm going to just read out his section, and then I want to talk briefly about sort of his motivations for doing this. Quillan Elderleaf, or Quillan Elderleaf's son, Carp, said he found a secret tunnel in the woods, but Red Brands almost caught him. They didn't catch him, but they almost caught him, and he's been a little bit worried about going there. He does know, though, they are what appears to be some sort of secret tunnel or location that gets into their hideout somewhere in the woods. He's pretty sure he does. So this is going to lead the players' characters to Elderleaf Farm, and that'll open up their ability to get to the Red Brands. Certainly to get to the Red Brands hideout through the back door if you want them to do that. They also can find out from Quillan that there is an individual by the name of Rudolph the Druid who lives in Thunder Tree, and he has lots of information, knows huge amounts about the area, and he lives near a dragon. So he's not a good idea if you want your players to avoid exploring Thunder Tree and dealing with a dragon. So don't drop that one until much later on. But he will know the location of Cragmore Castle. He will know the location of many different areas or places that the players might be interested in through their characters. So you actually get the opportunity to pick up 2 different adventure hooks from Pip by following his advice and going to Elderleaf Farm to find out from Carp what he knows, and then of course from Quillan as well. Now, why is Pip doing this? Well, Pip is the sort of individual who would know pretty much what his mother and father are going through, and he's totally aware that the Red Brands suck, that getting rid of them would be awesome. And so if he would want to make it easier for the players' characters, particularly if they showed that they were willing to stand up to the Red Brands. So if they had an encounter, for example, with the Red Brands, you could pull Pip out of the inn and have him have a chat with them after their battle with the Red Brands or the Red Brand ruffians in town, when you do your sort of your Old West OK Corral, Wyatt Earp scene. You could drop his information so that they could then pursue that, find out where that secret entrance is, and then deal with the Red Brands, and then hopefully find out additional information about Cragmore Castle if they still need that, and if they don't, then they don't. The last character is Frida. Frida is a weaver. The thing I find interesting about Frida is she's one of the individuals within the story that doesn't necessarily need to be there, but she actually has a lot of really interesting information, and she actually leads the players on a journey that is sort of covert, but also a darker path, and she doesn't even know she's doing it. So she has an elegant, simple dress. It's clear that she's made it herself because she's a weaver and she knows how to sew. She's got some fine jewellery. She's got reasonably attractive features, but you can tell that she's got worry lines on her forehead. She gets caught up into things quite a lot, and therefore, as a result of that, she always looks like she's under some sort of stress. She's wearing a purple dress or top with what looks like a an overcoat of some kind, but without sleeves, obviously. So it's sort of the kind of garb that you would expect a man to wear, but it's got a feminine look to it. And as I said, why is she dropping this? Because she has a lot of concerns. Now, what does she say? The red brands hassle every business in town, except the Phandalin Miners Exchange. They don't want trouble with Halia Thornton, who runs the place. So we already know quite a little bit of information. We know that Phandalin's Mine Exchange or Miners Exchange is not getting affected. Lennar might be able to explain why that's the case. That's up to you whether you want to sort of feed into that. If they go and ask questions from Lennar, the miner, and that leads them to the mining exchange. Now, what is there at the mining exchange? The mining exchange will lead them to Halia giving them a job offer to eliminate. She will be quite blunt about her approach. To eliminate the red brand leader. She doesn't want the whole gang wiped out. She believes and reiterates that she believes that taking out the red brand leader is the important thing to do rather than taking out the whole gang. Now, her motives, and the players will never be aware of this because you shouldn't make it obvious in any way whatsoever, is she wants to take over the red brands herself. She is a Zentarum spy, and therefore she would be quite happy to control Phandalin through the red brand. So if they pick up this particular adventure hook, they're actually playing into Halia and the Zenth. And it won't necessarily be to the betterment of Phandalin. So I actually find Frida providing this is the one character who probably shows the most concern about what's happening to Phandalin. And she's dropping the hint and tip that will get the whole of Phandalin not out of trouble, but into different trouble, which is quite interesting. It's quite a nice twist for those of you who are interested in twisting your story just a little bit. Okay, now the best rumour to drop, as I said, is Lennar, the Miners adventure hook and rumour. So drop that one, and that will lead them into those 3 hooks, which they can pick up. And you can present all of them or just some of them. I would suggest presenting all of them, and they can then make a decision about what is most important and what they can do, because it does give them plenty to work with. Any NPC in the inn can tell the characters that the red brands frequent the sleeping giant tap house and that they are trouble. That is common knowledge. You do not need to go into all of the non-player characters' flaws, bonds, personality traits, and ideals. It isn't actually necessary. You do not need to build that kind of complexity. And I know there's going to be somebody on the internet or somebody on YouTube who says you should build complexity around even the small NPCs. That's a lot of extra work. You've already got enough work to do. I've done tons of videos on the main NPCs in your campaign. And so why do you need to have all the information on all of these smaller characters right down? You can do that if you want. I have provided you with a picture, a description, what they say, a basic motivation for why they're doing something. That's enough. And if anybody says otherwise, I'll tell them where to go, because it's unfair to a dungeon master to have to do that level of preparation. Now, if you like that sort of thing and it's important to you, that is fine. I'm not going to give you a hard time about that. But for those of you who are preparing this, do not get caught up in the zeal that people insist. If that's their choice, they do it. But for you, you do not need to do that. Okay, what about some of the key characters? Would the NPCs in the inn actually know about them? Now, the ones that I've just talked about, I've talked about Trelina and Pip a little bit with regard to what they sort of know. Do they know anything about Gundren Rockseeker? How much do they know about Gundren Rockseeker and their brothers? I really think that's up to you. It is possible that Lennar, the miner, knows a little bit about Gundren Rockseeker, but the Rockseekers didn't really spend an awful lot of time with people in Phandalin. There are key individuals they had interactions with who would know about them, and I've already talked about that to some extent. But not every NPC needs to know something about Gundren Rockseeker and the Rockseeker brothers and their mine. So don't get caught up into that sort of that argument. It's up to you what you do with that. What about Iano Elbrick? Iano Elbrick isn't really known by any of the NPCs in the inn. And the reason being is because Iano never really made his arrival at Phandalin clear. He actually made arrangements with the Red Brands to meet in secret. And in fact, him going to Phandalin, he probably went under a pseudonym and may have dressed completely differently and may have not even actually needed to go into Phandalin itself and gone directly to the Red Brands meeting point. So that doesn't mean that your NPCs don't know something about Iano. But I don't think that the adventure actually makes it clear that they knew anything whatsoever about Iano Elbrick. So you don't need to worry about doing that sort of stuff if you don't want to. So that's all I have on Stonehill Inn. I know that it doesn't seem like a huge amount of information. I feel that a lot of people can get a little bit carried away with the kind of information and detail that you give in any kind of adventure. But if you found this interesting and educational or helpful, please share and like the video. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. If you want to support my channel, you supported my channel by watching this video. I have hundreds more, lots of videos on the Lost Mine of Phandelver for anybody who might be interested. This is not the only one. There's a whole series on them. Now, I don't do Patreon, but down in the description you will find affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price, and that helps support me doing more videos. Now, this is your opportunity to ask questions, give feedback, or just disagree with me or agree with me or just say hi. You can do that in the live chat right now. Start typing away. Now, if you're not part of the live chat, that's what the comments section's for. Use the comments section. I do respond to people, so don't feel like if you type something in, I will never respond. That's not the case. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.